I came back from the Marathon of Sables, and I was back at work, and I work in London, and I was walking across Trafalgar Square, and on the pavement in chalk, they had all these pavement artists, and in the morning, I get to work early, like 6:30 in the morning, and it's just deserted, but you get the detritus of the night before, and there, in chalk was written, "You only have 2 lives, and the second one starts when you realise you only have one." And that's a bit like the Pink Floyd song. You think your life is forever. You think, when something goes wrong, it's all right, I'll go again. If that fails, I'll just do that instead. But actually, you've only got one life. And I didn't realise that until I had that day I went for a run after chemotherapy. That was the day I realised it's either be a victim or be a victor.
Hello, beautiful people. On today's podcast, we have the amazing Kevin Weber. In 2014, at the young age of 49, Kevin was informed that he has terminal prostate cancer and may only live as short as 2 more years. What is truly just incredible about this story is that Kevin is still with us 7 years post-diagnosis, and he attributes his longevity in the context of this terminal illness to his running and his daily practice of planning tomorrow today. So I asked Kevin to send over his bio so that I could truly honor the running that he's done. But I have to say, I'm sorry, Kevin, I truly can't mention everything. It's just far too much. From ultramarathons in Cambodia, Spain, Albania, Jordan, pulling a 40-kilo sled over 120 miles, almost 200 kilometers in the Arctic, being the only person with stage 4 cancer to finish MDS 4 times, which is a 250-kilometer stage run through the Sahara Desert, and more recently, due to COVID restrictions, decided to run the MDS in his own backyard, which totaled an astonishing 2,600 laps. And he is also on a running streak, having ran over 540 days in a row so far, covering over 6,600 kilometers. He has been awarded the British Empire Medal from the Queen's Birthday Honours List and was granted the Freedom of the City of London. Kevin has fundraised over £250,000 for Prostate Cancer UK and has also inspired his family and friends to raise over £500,000, totaling to a life-changing and I would say life-saving £750,000. So personally, what I love about this podcast is I very quickly came to realise there was no necessity in hearing my own voice. Kevin is a storyteller, and you will find shortly into the podcast, I allow the space for him to share his very vulnerable story with no interruption. Yes, this podcast goes for 2 hours. The man sure can talk, but I encourage you that if any moment you feel you don't have enough time for this, you're in a hurry, other things to do, to be aware of those thoughts, because for the next 2 hours, these are the words from a man with a terminal illness. These are words from a man that has lived that so many things to do, not enough time kind of life. And as he shares from the wise words of Confucius, we have 2 lives and the second begins when we realize we have one. I know for most of us, if not all, we have heard stories before of people being told that their life will be cut short, so to speak. Priorities change, and for a moment it may inspire us to have a look at our life and the people around us in a different way. But amongst the day-to-day, that inspiration tends to weaken, and generally we return to the norm. So in knowing this, I ask that we be the kind of people today that really take the time to listen to Kevin, for us not to be the person to be faced with the darkness of regret when we come to truly face death, but as Kevin shares, to be truly proud of who we are every day, to also enjoy what we do every day, and ensure we are always making good memories. So I encourage you, just like I did, pull up a chair and sit back, maybe grab an iced tea or even go for a walk or run in nature. But whatever you do, just stay present. Listen to the wisdom that is a true gift to us all this day. So, welcome to the To Be Human podcast, Kevin Weber.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. It's such an honor to have you here. So, Kevin, I would love to start off with a quote of yours that I found reading your beautiful blog. And this goes back to, I assume, around 2014. I got home, shuffled out of the car, felt ill, and the most depressed and sad that I have ever been in my entire life. I remember sitting in a chair at home having my dinner with absolutely no joy in my life. Nothing good to look forward to, and the thought of not just my demise, but also me ruining the lives of my wife and family, of me being a burden. So, Kevin, please talk to me about how around the age of 49 you were first diagnosed with terminal cancer and the impact that that had not only on yourself but also your family.
It's, if you said to anyone, imagine how you behave if you were diagnosed with something bad tomorrow, I think a lot of people would say the first thing they would do is go and find the nearest bottle of Jack Daniels and I think that's how I felt at first. Everything became hopeless. There was no point to anything. That's where I found with life. There was nothing I could do. My prognosis was perhaps as short as 2 years. I now know it could have been only 3 months because other people I know in my situation have died within 3 months from diagnosis. And it's all, what's the point? What's the point of learning? What's the point of looking after yourself? What's the point of looking after the house? What's the point of servicing the car? That everything had no point because it was, well, I'm not going to be here for it. And it was really tough to try and at first get out of that hole. And I spent a good month just crying a lot. And I remember at first I cried openly, and then I realised that wasn't fair on my wife. So I used to wait until she fell asleep at night, and then I'd cry in the bed on my own because I just already felt a massive burden. The first 2 days from diagnosis was as well as me. It was very selfish. I didn't care about anyone else. Not that I didn't care in terms of I don't care about you anymore, but my head was so full about me, it was all about me. So for 2 days, it was, I can't do this and I can't do that and I'll never see this and I'll never see that. And then after about 2 days, it became, woe is my family. And it became, they won't ever have this and they won't ever have that. And they'll have to deal with this. And that was an important step to go from me to them because, in life, it's all about other people. It's all about the world. It's not just about me. But sometimes it's quite hard. You get wrapped up in your own life, your own career, your own relationships, your own problems. And then you don't ever look up and realise there's a whole world outside you. And you don't also realise that you don't live in a vacuum. So the things that you do actually impact on other people. Even if you think, if I just do this, then other people, I won't upset other people. I really struggled for probably 2 months. So the first couple of days about me, the next 2 months about my family.
And so in that, like, what was the moment in which it shifted in those first 2 days? Was there something that happened or?
Like a lot of things in life, when you first hear something, that day or week, it's enormous. Good or bad, it's enormous. But then you get used to it. You kind of get used to it. The problem with my situation was every time I tried to almost forget where I was, I'd be reminded with another blood test, another doctor's appointment, some more drugs to take. Every day, the first thing I do when I wake up every day is take some drugs. So even if I want to forget about cancer and my mortality, I'm reminded every day, the second I wake up, I'll take them within 15 seconds of waking up every day. So you can't avoid it. So it's very difficult to actually take yourself out of cancer. So it's a bit like if there's a concert you want to go to and you manage to get tickets. That when you first get a ticket, it's like, yeah, a high five. I've got tickets to go and see Coldplay, great. It's in a year and a half's time. 3 weeks later, you've forgotten you've got those tickets. They're no longer important. And I think that's where eventually I got to. And even with taking the drugs every day, I managed to kind of overcome thinking about what they were for. It was just a habit. So I just take these pills every day. I didn't start thinking about what they're for. But at first, it was these pills I'm taking because I'm going to die. Then it was these pills I'm taking because I might live a bit longer if I take them. And then it was just these pills I take. This was what I do. It's like opening your eyes in the morning. I open my eyes, I take the pills, have a glass of water. That's what you do. And then I managed to have a real bit of escapism over Christmas. I was about to start chemotherapy. And it was strange to me. My doctor said, "Oh, you can start on the 18th of December." And I thought, well, how about I start on the 5th of January instead? And he said, "Why?" He said, "Why do you want to start? Why do you want to delay?" I said, "Will it matter?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, in that case, I'd rather have Christmas without having chemotherapy, if that's okay to you." He said, "Oh, okay, if that's what you want, that's okay. We'll start on the 13th of January then." So I just remember thinking, why didn't you think of that? Because surely... But then that's, and doctors are amazing people, but they are quite generally one-dimensional. They think about what they do to try and save you. They're not very good at going outside their area of expertise. Like their bedside manner is generally just about sorting you out, the physical sorting you out, not the mental sorting you out. So anyway, we went away for Christmas and I had a really good time. We hired a house. My two best friends and their families, we all got together. It was like 11 of us, and we just kind of partied like it was 1999 sort of thing. It was, to me, it was my last ever. It was the last hurrah. I never thought I'd have another holiday with my family. I never thought I'd go out with those friends again and be like I was then. Because prostate cancer at the early stages, in fact, even when it spread early on, there are no side effects apart from you go to have a wee all the time. But beyond that, life is normal. So I had that holiday and we came back. And then, of course, when I got back, then it was like countdown to chemo. Because, everything I'd ever heard about chemotherapy was grim. No one ever tells you chemotherapy is fun. No one ever tells you that you don't feel ill. So it's just going to be this impending doom. I guess my life sort of is like I'm on death row. There is no reprieve, but you hope there is a reprieve. You hope that one day someone will find a cure for someone in my situation. And every month I have the blood test and I get the results. And that result is almost like writing to the governor, like in America, you write to the governor for pleading, and all he says is, "I'll think about it in a month's time." So you get another month, and then you go through the whole process again. And I mean, actually, it's worse than that, because when you actually wait for that letter, so you have that month, you get told you've got a month, you kind of forget about it. First of all, it's like dodging a bullet. So you have a couple of days where you had a near miss, so you're still worried about it. Then you have a week or two where you just become normal again. And then you have this build-up to, will I get the letter that says I have another month's reprieve? And the day of that letter, pre-COVID, you'd go in a room and, my meeting was maybe 2:00, so I'd get there early and we'd be in the room. And normally the doctors are on time. When it's face-to-face, they're normally sort of 10 minutes either side. So you sit in the room and they're going to be with you shortly. And then it's like Russian roulette, because they come in with the gun. The gun's their folder. They come in the gun and they've got the answer. But to me, one day that answer will go bang. But they open the folder and say, "Kevin," and they say, "Your scores are still good." So it's gone click. There's no bang, it's just gone click. The chambers turn one more time. And I told my doctor that's how I felt. And when I was first diagnosed, I get that. And a few years on, I said to him, "I still feel like Russian roulette." He said, "Yeah, I understand that still. But now there are 3 bullets in the chamber." Because when you're first diagnosed, the chances are you'll make a year and probably make 2 years. So there's only 1 bullet and there's lots of empty chambers. When you get to where I am, there's lots of bullets and not many empty chambers. So the chances of having that good blood test for the average person is not very good now. I think statistically only 30% of men survive 5 years from their diagnosis of where I am. And I'm here 6.5 years on. So I'm, 30%, so it's probably only 20%. All the men, without exception, all the men I know who are diagnosed around the time I was diagnosed are all dead. So I got to know quite a lot of men from forums and things where you try and find out about prostate cancer, and you share your own sort of your human concerns about life, all the things that worry us all. And they're the only place you can go. I love my wife, but I can't burden her with stuff. There's no point. If I wake up and I feel rubbish, which I do quite frequently, what's the point of me saying to her, I feel really rubbish today? What's she going to do? At best, she'll give me a hug. And at worst, she'll look at me not knowing what to do, feel guilty, and I'll ruin her day. And I'm going to ruin her life. So I have no right to ruin her day unless I have to. And I don't have to. So, I just keep it to myself. And that's the beauty of forums, is that you can share with other people who you don't really know, who totally understand where you come from, who sometimes remind you that actually life isn't as bad as you think it is. I like to think I'm the one that does that to other people. At first I didn't. At first it was like, woe is me, and it's all, what's the point? But now I realise that you haven't got to be a victim. You haven't got to go down the path that people think you should go down. And people expect you to behave in a certain way. And I expected me to behave in a certain way, which kind of brings me on to what happened after that holiday at Christmas, because then I started chemotherapy, and I had all these really negative thoughts in my head about what it would be like. Most of them are true, by the way, but they were all there. And sometimes it's worse when it's the unknown, because I guess that's what would happen, but I didn't know. So it's like, what's in the box, but you don't know till you open it, but you kind of think you're guessing. And sometimes just dealing with it is better than bottling it up. Telling someone you've done something wrong is better than waiting and thinking how will they behave. Just go and tell them and find out how they behave. Just be honest. Honesty is one of my definite learnings in life since I've been here. Not that I was a liar before, but actually being really honest to people, having just said, I don't tell my wife how I feel. But anyway, nonetheless, that's a bit of a good
It's a learning process.
It's a learning process. But that's for good reason. I'm dishonest with, actually I'm not dishonest, I just don't tell her, because I've thought through what the process would be if I told her the truth as often as those days happen.
And is that something that she is aware of and sort of something that's agreed upon, or is that more a decision that you've made?
With different people. So I'm someone that likes to know the facts of things. So I'm an analytical person. I'm emotional about today, but I try not to get emotional about tomorrow. So I want to know what it's like to die of prostate cancer. I want to know about the drugs. I want to know where it might go, what it might do to me, so I can plan. I'm one of life's great planners. When I go on holiday this year, I will already have booked my next year's holiday. I love to look forward to things or be aware of things that are going to be a problem, and then mentally deal with it in a structured way, but not an emotional way. My wife, however, is someone who doesn't like the future in terms of she can't cope with bad things. And so she said to me, if you wake up and feel all right today, it's a good day. That's all you have to worry about. And she's absolutely right. That is a good lesson in life. If you feel okay, don't worry about tomorrow. But I don't worry about tomorrow. I just think about tomorrow, I said, from an analytical way. But if you're someone that worries about tomorrow, do not worry about tomorrow. Just enjoy today. And that's definitely one of my learnings, is to make the most of it every day, because every day is a gift. Today, here I am, the sun's kind of trying to shine. I do feel okay. I'm hopefully doing a little bit of good with this podcast. And therefore, what's there not to love about today? And I have got things to look forward to tomorrow. So there's no reason to worry about today. But I did worry about chemotherapy. And it really is as grim as you think, not just because of what it's like for you, but no one's ever going to warn you. No one ever likes to tell you how bad things are. So even if you ask the doctor, they won't tell you. They might give you a pamphlet, but that's quite scary because that tells you about all the things that could possibly go wrong. And it's unlikely all those things will go wrong. So you can scare the pants off yourself by reading the whole pamphlet. But best not to. It's best to just find out the obvious ones. And then if other ones happen, then read the pamphlet afterwards and say, oh, yeah, okay, that is a side effect. But the bit I wasn't ready for was when you go into a room and there are 5 other people in there already, all having chemotherapy already. And it's a soulless, lifeless place where nobody smiles. They all sit there. They've all got cancer. They're all sad. They're all probably feeling pretty grim. Most of them were ahead of me. So that was my first session. They were waiting on session 5. Different sorts of cancers as well. So my port was going to be in my hand, but some have it in their breast, some have it in their neck, some have a permanent port somewhere. So you just do all these tubes and horrible things in a place where people are sitting on their own, just looking sad. And also the room was pretty nasty. You know, they should do something about their chemotherapy room, make it a bit brighter. You know, it was that wasn't very nice either. And I remember sitting there, and one of my, you know, we all have silly phobias in life. Well, I say we all do. I do. I don't mind injections, but I've always hated the thought of a cannula in my hand. And that was one of the things I knew was going to have to happen, having never had to have that in my life before. Because I was, you know, I've been pretty healthy prior to this. And that filled me with dread more than the chemotherapy in some respects. I remember when they put the cannula in, I spent the whole hour and a half wanting to rip it out, looking at it. And in the end, the nurse suggested you put a pillow over it so I couldn't see it. Because it doesn't hurt. Yeah, it doesn't hurt at all. At all. And sometimes you just feel a cold sensation when some of the fluid goes in, but it's just a cold sensation. But just looking at it, I wanted to rip the thing off. Now I'm okay with it. Now that's gone now. You just do what you like. Neither was fine. So I sat there and, you know, my wife was with me and someone had told me to take frozen pineapple cubes to suck on, because the idea is that you lose your taste buds basically when you have chemotherapy. And so if you can slow the spread down to certain bits of your body, the extremities, then the idea is you don't lose that sense of taste. And that's why people put cold caps on their head. They try and not lose their hair. That's why people do that sort of thing. And so the first time, that's what I did. I had these pineapple cubes, which then gave me mouth ulcers because chemotherapy is awful. And pineapple is one of those things, if too much of it gives you ulcers. So you put the two things together, ulcer city. After chemo, my mouth was full of sores. And I thought about it. Actually, I'm going on a bit, but I thought about it. And in my head, I then thought, you know what, I've got cancer. It's not my fault. You know, I did nothing to get prostate cancer. It just happened. And I want to have the best shot of getting rid of it or reducing its effects. I won't ever get rid of it. And I'm not someone who wants to go, hey, look at me, I've got cancer. But I'm not ashamed of it. If you want to ask me about it, I'll tell you about it. And I think that actually losing your hair is just a badge of honor. And so I think if that's what it's going to do to you, that's what it does to you. I had a man introduced to me once by my oncologist. I'm such a big-headed now. I'm such a unique person in the prostate cancer world that my oncologist refers people to me who are struggling with parts of prostate cancer. So he doesn't send them to people and doesn't send them to qualified doctors or psychiatrists. I get them. Only occasionally. And I had this man that had prostate cancer for a while, but now it became incurable. At first it was curable, but it hadn't worked. And his biggest fear was losing his hair. Now he was probably about 55 when losing his hair, and because he hadn't told anyone, apart from his wife, hadn't told anyone. And I said, that's terrible. I said, you've got to tell people. And I couldn't get across to him about just telling people. He wouldn't tell anyone. And the problem, if you don't tell anyone, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to protect them. But then if it suddenly goes wrong fast, then people have got no time to have good times with you. Because there's plenty of good times ahead if you start today. If you try and start in 3 months or a year, maybe there aren't plenty of good times ahead. So you have to start now. And the last reason that I don't believe you should try and slow the chemotherapy down is because chemotherapy is trying to kill or reduce the cancer cells in your body. So if you wear a cold cap, or if you have frozen pineapple chunks, or put your feet or your fingers in cold gloves to stop the neuropathy that you tend to get, then that means the drugs aren't getting to your fingertips. That means the drugs aren't getting to around your hair follicles. They're not getting around your tongue, which means that if there's some cancer in the blood around there, you're not killing it either. So my head says just let it go everywhere and just take the consequences short term, because longer term it might be better for you.
Do you feel like, just sort of going back to the man that you gave the example of, do you feel like in itself it's not in your interest to internalize something like a terminal illness versus sort of in your situation, you know, you've accepted it, you're happy to have a conversation about it. Do you feel like there's a better way, whether that is being internal or sharing about it, or do you think it's kind of up to you in your own personal way and how you deal with it, what's going to be best for you?
So when I was first diagnosed, I said to you it was about woe is me. And then 2 days later, it became woe is my family. And that's really the answer to that question. If you want to be all about you and woe is me and can't get beyond that, and I'm doing this because of me, and they might say, well, I'm doing it to protect my family. You're not protecting your family. Not sharing a problem is not sharing, that's the bit. And, when I was first diagnosed, it was woe is me. Then it was woe is my family. Then it was woe of anyone with prostate cancer. So for the next year, I felt really sorry for, and I don't mean sorry like you look at a pet that's injured. I mean, I felt for people whose their lives who had prostate cancer. And then the next epiphany, because I've had a few in my journey, actually then it became woe is anyone with any kind of problem in life. And that problem could be anything from the car's broken down, I'm going to be late for a meeting, to the boiler's broken and I can't afford to fix it. My child's just failed their exams. I've got a dodgy nose and people look at it all the time. To I've got terminal cancer or whatever. They are all just as important. And people say, well, don't be silly, Kevin. They can't, surely cancer's more important than my car broken down. Not at that moment. For you, that's the most important thing. That's the thing right now that is stopping your life moving forward. And so I never belittle people's problems. And I think a lot of the mental health issues that are around nowadays are because people belittle their own problems. They say, I can't share those. They're only my problems. And they're not as bad as someone else's. I'll tell you a true story. So we'll come on to running later on. But I met a guy in a race once, and his name's Duncan, and he was a soldier, and he got his legs blown off in Afghanistan. So the Range Rover, or the Land Rover he was in, got blown up. The guy on the left of him walked away scot-free. He lost his legs. The guy on the right died. So he had a lot of mental challenges. A lovely guy, but a lot of mental challenges under the surface because there was a bit of survivor's guilt. Why me? Why did I live and that guy die? The guy next to him had even worse survivor's guilt. How come I've got my legs? And how come I'm alive? But anyway, so he did this race, I did this race. But we both finished. And we're in a bar in Morocco, having a couple of beers, or more than a couple of beers.
Partied like it was 1999.
It was. Well, every day is 1999, that's what I say. High-fiving each other because we finished the race. And we'd done the race the year before, but he hadn't finished. So it was 2 years on. So high-five him. And we got talking about whose situation was worse. And I said, I just don't know what it'd be like to live with no legs. He's lost his ability below the waist as well, so to speak. So he feels lucky because he's already got a daughter, but he couldn't have kids again now. And I said, it must be really tough not being able to walk properly. And, and he said, and he listened to me and he said, and he comes from in England, a place called Norfolk, where they've got a funny accent. apologies to people in Norfolk, but you have got a funny accent. And he said, he said to me, but Kevin, I'm living, you're going to die. And that was it. To him, his problem was nothing, because I was going to die in his opinion, and that was the worst thing. We both cracked up when he said that, by the way. But that was, that's in his view, anything, living with any disability was better than being dead. And so therefore he didn't have a problem. I had the problem. And he was, and that's a fantastic attitude to have, to not, to actually just, I'm alive, that's good enough. And that's how I feel. And that's why I go back to that suicide thing at the start. You don't ever commit suicide because you're alive. There's joy in every day. I walked out of that first chemotherapy session, and I behaved just like I thought I had to. So I didn't decide what I did in terms of I made a conscious choice. It was just that I've had chemotherapy. Everyone's told me I'm going to be ill now, so I better be ill. And I remember I shuffled. I could have walked, but I didn't. I shuffled to the car. I don't know why I shuffled to the car. Well, I do know why, but I didn't need to shuffle. The chemo at that point in time hadn't done anything to me at all. It was going to, but all I had, it was in my body. It wasn't actually doing anything at that point in time. So I shuffled to the car. My wife drove home. I could have driven. I shuffled out of the car, sat in a chair, put the telly on, felt glum. My wife brought me dinner. I ate it. Couldn't taste it, mind you. Went to bed, lay there, cried, couldn't sleep, because when you have chemotherapy, they have to give you loads of steroids to try and counteract the chemotherapy. So chemotherapy kills the bad stuff, but it also kills some of the good stuff. So the steroids try and keep some of the good stuff going. And you have loads of them, tons of them. And so it's like having 16 double espressos before going to bed. So you just don't sleep. And so I lay there, all night. Sort of, I may have dozed a bit, but I was like thinking about, this is, life is over. It's all grim. I've got this for the next 4 months. It's going to get worse.
At that point, at that point in the night, and in that stage in your life, was it really like, this is over? Like in that space in that night, was it just kind of like, this is my sentence, I'm going to die within the next 2 years, and that's just kind of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't think I had 2 years left to live, because when, I'd had 3 months already at that point in time. So I'm already down to 1 3/4 years, because when someone tells you those things, even if they don't actually mean them literally, that, the 2 years, boom, you're going to fall over, you take it literally. So I thought, I've got a year of treatment. So I had radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and loads of drugs. That's about a year. And those drugs will make me feel grim. And then I've got a year of dying. So actually, I'm already dead, really. In terms of life as I knew it, my thoughts were, life is over. So what's the point? We're going back to the what's the point stuff.
And what do you think, I'd love to know your opinion just on this topic, with doctors providing sort of a timeline of like an estimation of how long you're going to live. Do you feel like it's a necessary thing to tell patients?
I think doctors need to understand their patient. And the problem with that is they don't get the opportunity to. So most doctors the doctors that told me, I had never seen before. So I walked into the results of 2 months of pretty grim tests, one in particular, awful biopsy experience. And he didn't know me at all. So he didn't know if I was someone like my wife, who can't deal with the future if it's bad, or me, who wants to know the future. So a lot of people don't ask because they don't think about asking. I actually asked him. So I wanted to know. And he said, his actual words were, you might live 2 to 10 years. No, don't think 10 years. He said, don't ever think 10 years. So the second he said it, he retracted it. Said, no, don't think 10 years, 2 years. If you're lucky, 3 to 4. Now, at the time, that made my wife and I burst into tears. And that's where, it all went grim from then on, because I thought he was going to tell me that I was curable, because 82% of men on diagnosis are curable of prostate cancer. So the odds were I was in the group that would be cured. My dad had prostate cancer. He was cured. I was in the 18% that was incurable on diagnosis. So I'd gone in there thinking I was going to have a choice of 3 treatments. None of them are pretty grim, just 3 treatments. And I walked out being told I was going to die. So that was quite a shock. Did he do the right thing? Absolutely. I call him Dr. Death. I've never seen him since. I call him Dr. Death because he's the one that told me I was going to die. I then saw another doctor, who I still have, and he was like Dr. Live, because he told me how things might be better than the prognosis. So the first one was a cutter. He's a surgeon, so I call him a cutter. And because he couldn't cut it out because of where it spread to, that was it. It was game over. The other guy is an oncologist. He's a drug man, so I call him the zapper. So the zapper, he knew he could do stuff. So therefore, he had more hope. But the cutter doesn't, as I said earlier, doctors work in silos. The cutter knows all about cutting, doesn't know much about zapping. The zapper knows all about zapping. And even if they know, there's a protocol within within doctors where they don't stray onto other people's area of expertise. It's almost that unwritten rule. I just deal with that, and that's their job. If you want to know about that, you go and see them. You don't get, apart from general practitioners, once you actually see a specialist, they just stick to their own specialist area, which I understand why, but it's a bit frustrating sometimes. So he's the one that gave us hope, but that was only hope that I might live 2 years. I was thinking I might live less. And again, the stats, you do all the research. Google's your friend and your enemy. When you get told you have terminal cancer, it's your enemy, pretty sure. And I was, there's nothing good on Google when you get told you've got terminal cancer. So, yeah, my doctors, I think, should tell you, unless you're someone that really can't cope.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, if you hadn't told me, I would still be living like I had forever, potentially. And the danger of that is you waste time. There's a fantastic song by, I love music, fantastic song by Pink Floyd. It's an old song on their Great Dark Side of the Moon album, and it's called Time. And the words of that song, I think every child at school should be made to study the words of that song like it's poetry. Not because it tells you about, at first, was it, you fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way, because you do. And then there's a line that says, and then one day you found 10 years have got behind you. And that's exactly what it's like. You're in your 20s and you think, oh, I've got forever. And then one day you're 35 and you're 40 and you're thinking, well, actually, I'm now 40. And that's why they have midlife crisis. That's exactly the reason, because they get to 40 and they go, all these things I want to do, I haven't done them. I've lost all that time. And that's when they go and do all the stupid things that they should have been doing in their 20s. And then, then you kind of, then the end, and it's too late. And then you look back with regret, because then you're very old and maybe physically you can't do stuff, and you go, oh, it's too late for that now. So, yeah, a great song. People should read the words rather than just listen to the song for its musical qualities. But anyway, sorry, I digress. So I walked out of that. So the next day after my chemotherapy, I woke up and it was January, and January in the UK is miserable. It was wet. It was cold, and I remember getting up. I felt rubbish. So from the night before, where I didn't feel rubbish but thought I ought to, now I actually did feel rubbish. I looked out the window and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go for a run. And my wife looked at me and said, you can't go for a run. I had chemotherapy yesterday. I said, well, the doctor, he didn't say I couldn't go for a run, because he knew I used to run a bit. I said, yeah, but he didn't say I couldn't go. She said, but you never asked him. I said, well, of course I didn't, you know. So she looked at me in absolute horror. She said, where are you going to go? And I said, I'm going to go to the park, which is about half a mile from where I live. And I run to the park. I run around the park for as long as I can, and then I run back. I'll take my phone with me. You know, I took a bit of cardboard with my name on it and my phone number and where I lived in case I passed out and someone found me. And off I went. And it was probably, it was the hardest 3 miles I've ever run in my life. The weekend before chemotherapy, I'd run 20 miles, no problem at all. I remember running it thinking this might be the last time I ever run because my fears of chemotherapy were so grim. But I ran 3 miles. I got home. I felt so sick. I felt absolutely shattered. I mean, I say ran. The definition of running is both feet in the air at the same time. They were, but it was so slow. You know, it was so slow. I got home, but I was so happy. I was so happy because I'd run. And it was a different running, but I'd run. You know, when you get told many things in life, when you get told you haven't got long to live, and when you get told you have prostate cancer and you start chemotherapy, and actually the drugs before that, lots of things disappear. So, you know, we all dream, and I don't mean like at night you wake up and there was a weird dream about some cheese and a chair. You know, I don't mean that kind of dream. I mean, we dream about retirement, and in my case, I always dreamt about getting a camper van and driving around Europe with my wife. I dreamt about going to America. I love baseball, and going to see every baseball ground in America. I dreamt about my kids growing up, passing exams, getting married, going to university, getting a degree, me being a granddad, retiring with my mates down the pub, having loads of beers, watching sport on TV. I dreamt about me running in a few amazing places. Suddenly, all that stops. You've got 2 years to live. Of those 2 years, I've already decided they're going to be rubbish. So, no, you can't dream anymore. What's the point? I will never go to Europe in a camper van. I will never see my daughter pass her A-levels, which are higher exams. I'll never see her go to university, get a degree. I'll never see her settle down. All those things are just gone. That's it. And then add to that with prostate cancer, the drugs mean that I can never have sex again. So, you know, all that function disappears below the waist. And, you know, whilst I'd like to think I'm an average kind of man in that department, and whilst it wasn't the be-all and end-all of life, you know, I enjoyed that kind of thing now and again. It's funny though, my wife hasn't had a headache for 6.5 years at night. So anyway, but you lose all those things. You know, all you get when you get told those things, everything is being taken away. You know, you won't. Even I was working still, and someone said, "Right, what's our 5-year plan?" And of course, I say that, and you internally burst into tears because you think, "Well, my 5-year plan, I'm going to be in a box by. I'll have been 3 years in a box by then." So, and I wouldn't ever want to stop people talking about things like that because they shouldn't have to tread on eggshells because of me. But all those things disappear. Someone says, "Oh, you know, the Ashes, England are playing Australia, you know, in 2 years' time, be in Melbourne." Well, not for me, it won't. You know, I won't be there. You know, and so all that stuff just disappears. And then suddenly I could run and I could dream again because it was short-term dreams. Well, if I can run, then maybe I can run further than 3 miles if I train. And I'd entered the Brighton Marathon before I was ill. And I just had this thing, or maybe, just maybe I could run a marathon. So I spoke to my oncologist and he just laughed. He said, "No one runs a marathon on your kind of chemotherapy with your kind of cancer." He said, "I'll tell you what, you try and find someone on Google." He said, "You like Google, go on Google and find someone." I couldn't find anyone in the world. People have run marathons on chemo, but not with my kind of chemo, with my kind of cancer. So I thought, okay. So I said, "Well, I still want to run it, you know." He said, "So if you can train for it," he said, "you can run it." So I thought, okay, there's a challenge for me. And so I started to train, and it was tough. You know, bear in mind that I ran 20 miles the weekend before. Just running 3 was hard, and I was going every other day and trying to run 3 miles, 4 miles, and I was doing loops around my house, so I was never going too far away in case I collapsed. So I was kind of never more than a mile away from the house. So very boring as well. I live in like suburbia full of concrete and houses. And eventually I got a bit further away, and I had a backpack now with food, warm clothes, that all-important note of where I live. If you find me, take me back here, please. Wow. The phone, some money, all just in case I collapsed and I had to pay someone to drive me home. I had to get a taxi, all those things. Even though I was only a mile away at worst, all those things were my fear. And it was really hard, harder than ever. And I remember at one stage, I was about 6 miles into a planned 10-mile run, and I just thought, I can't do this. And I just stopped under this bridge in the pouring rain and burst into tears. And that's when I learned one of my techniques that gets me through life now, is I visualised what it would be like crossing the finish line. Now, I've run the Brighton Marathon before when I was healthy. In fact, it was my fastest ever marathon, my only ever sub-4-hour marathon. And I know what the finish line looks like. And I thought, do you know what, to cross that finish line with my arms, normally you cross the finish line, go, so I finished, stop my watch, great, another marathon done. But not that. I thought, no, I'll have my arms in the air, I'll have a shirt on like this, arms in the air, looking up to the sky. I'd have done that marathon. My family will be there. I had this vision. My family will be there. I'll have proved to people I can run a marathon. How good will that be? And then that was it. Stopped crying and just got on with it. And whenever then I felt bad, I kept on visualising what it would be like to finish that marathon. So week 13 of chemo, I'd had, by then, 4 sessions. I'd had all sorts of problems along the way. I had my bone marrow wasn't working properly, so I had to do personal stomach injections, which I hated doing. That caused a problem in my spine. I had to stop those injections. In hospital for 4 days, antibiotics. Terrible. I mean, the chemo goes through a cycle. You have the first week where you go downhill fast, and you have a week with no immune system at all, where you feel rubbish, and if you catch anything, it's really going to do you in fast. And then you have a week where you gradually get better again. But if you started at 100 at week 1, at the end of week 3, you're back to 90. So the next session, you start at 90, and at the end of week 3, you get to 80. So you kind of dip down to 40 and then up to 80. And the next time you start at 80, you dip down to 30, you end up at 70. So every session, it gets worse and worse and worse. And so by week 13, it was time for the Brighton Marathon. So I ran it. I had a mate, Jim, that was training with me, and he ran it with me. And I finished about 4 hours, 38 minutes. So it was my slowest ever marathon. But I finished, and my wife was there, and some friends from work, unbeknown to me, had come down to Brighton because it's about 50 miles from where we live. And they were there as well, which was unexpected, and absolutely arms in the air. But I had Jim with me and another guy with a shirt like this. So 3 of us. His dad had prostate cancer. We found him along the way. He joined in with us to keep ourselves going. We were visualising, talking what it was like to finish, why we were doing it. Fantastic finish line. There's not a photo. Sadly, there's not a photograph of it, which is a shame, because normally on big marathon events they have lots of people taking photographs, but there wasn't. There wasn't. There was 12,000 people in the race, and anyway, never mind. And then I got home, and then about 2 days later, one of my son's friends' mums said, "Look, I might be able to get you a dodgy place in the London Marathon." Now, normally, if you can't run the London Marathon, you just give up your place, and they don't replace it. And they need about 4,000 people to drop out every year. So they allow 38,000 runners, but they can only cope with 34,000. So that's why if you drop out, that's it. They need 4,000 people to drop out, but they know they get 4,000 dropouts every year. So, but she said, "Look, I know there's a celebrity thing I'm involved in, and there's always celebrities that drop out. So if I can get you a place, do you want to run?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I know I shouldn't. I'm sorry to London Marathon, but hey, I'm dying. So that's what I'm going to do." And so 3 days before, I get this call, "You got a place." And so is Jim, right? Jim, he's my chaperone. And so great. And so we had to turn up to this building. The guy knew we weren't the personality, so we got the numbers. But you normally have a timing chip, which means people can follow you when you run online. He said, you're not going to get the chip, because if you get the chip, people will expect you to be the person you're running as, and you wouldn't tell us who that was. So, okay, no worries. So we ran the marathon together. I was 12 minutes faster, which was like amazing, and 2 weeks after the previous marathon. And then I remember in the London Marathon, you go past Buckingham Palace, and then you go up what's called the Mall, and there's the finish line. And I'd run it before when I was healthy. And I thought, oh no, when you finish, they take the timing chip off your shoe. And they're going to know, they're going to say, oh no, you know, what number, who are you? And well, your number. And I was thinking, oh no, I'm going to get found out, and I can see visions of getting the person in trouble and me getting whisked off to a police station, which is ridiculous. But I had all these visions. And then as I'm running up over the Tannoy, it says, because this is, I think it was like the 35th London Marathon or something, we're going to let you keep your timing tags as a souvenir. Yeah, so of course I got past there, got the medal, and that was great, you know, and that was excuse me, that was quite a buzz finishing that. And I remember we got back to the station in London and missed the train by a minute, and so my wife was there and Jim's wife was there, and we thought, hey, we go to the pub instead. So we went to the pub and had a beer, and that was a great way to celebrate running 2 marathons in 2 weeks. And then I got home, and a bit of reality. The problem when you do something great is there's always the come down. It's like you go on holiday, it's fantastic, and then you go back to work afterwards, which is why I always like to have my next holiday already booked, because that way, rather than feel sad that one's gone, I look forward to that one now. So it's a bit, you know, post-marathon blues, and, you know, now I'm looking forward to death and chemotherapy again, sort of thing, and it's not great. And then there's this race I always wanted to run. When I ran my first half marathon when I was 20 years old, maybe 21, I played rugby in my 20s. I love playing rugby. And the rugby club I play at, they had a half marathon. And someone said, oh, why don't you run it, Kev? And I thought, I don't really do running. You know, I might run on the pitch, but I don't do running. I thought, oh, I'll do it then. So I didn't do any training at all and ran this half marathon. And I kind of got the bug for running then. That's where that bug came from. And I bought a magazine because it was pre-internet, so you could look at things up on Google. And there was his first ever race called the Marathon des Sables. And I read about it, and I thought, wow, that's off the scale race. You know, I can just about run a half marathon, and this is like crazy. So I'd love to do that, but it was like a dream, you know, but I never will, because it costs money. There's training. There's lots of, you know, there's a week off work to do it. Never going to happen. And I was 20. So, but it always stayed as a kind of dream in my head. And I said to my wife about 3 years before, there's a James Cracknell. James Cracknell was an Olympic rower for Great Britain, and he ran it. And so for Christmas, I asked my Christmas present to be this DVD of him doing this Marathon des Sables. So I got it to Christmas Day, and I made the whole family watch it. And I said, I want to do that. And they all looked at me and said, you're absolutely mad. You know, you're never going to do that. And then my wife kind of politely reminded me about the cost and the time. And she was right. You know, my job was full on. I was working 12-hour days. I'd never have trained for it. And it was, if you do something like that to go when you probably are going to fail, then you shouldn't go. If you've got a chance, then you go. And so I'm someone, I believe you always put your foot on the start line if you've got a chance. But actually, I wouldn't have just done the training, and I'd have come back feeling pretty grim if I had failed because it was my fault. So never going to happen. So anyway, I get back from these 2 marathons. My wife says, why don't you do the Marathon des Sables? And it's like, yeah, thank you. so I'm sitting in front of my doctor, and he says to me, so what are you doing next? And you expect me to say, oh, I'm going to do like 5K park runs and things. I said, there's this race I want to do called the Marathon des Sables. He said, oh, okay. He said, what's that then? I said, well, in simple terms, so it's a marathon Sunday, a marathon Monday, a marathon Tuesday, double marathon Wednesday, marathon Friday, half marathon Saturday, in the Sahara, carrying everything on your back for a week, all your food and everything, about 25 pounds on your back. It's about 50 degrees centigrade. In the shade, there isn't any shade. The sand dunes are like 200 feet high. You go on for 10 miles of a stretch. Oh, you go over mountains, you'd need ropes to pull yourself over. And he looked at me, he said, why would anyone want to do that, let alone someone in your situation? I said, but I want to do it. And he said, I'll tell you what, if you can train for it, you can do it. So again, there was the challenge. I had a year. I had I had a year of training. Problem with that race, it was always sold out in those days. So I had to then contacted them that sold out. So I then went to Prostate Cancer UK and said, look, I'm going to pay for the place. Is it possible you can like lean on a bit? You know, you might, and they phone up and get a call. If you pay your money now, you're in. So really, so I'm in. So I parted with £4,500. It's not cheap. So what's that? Yeah, 7,000 Australian dollars, I guess. Quite a lot of money. And so, yeah, I was going. And then I had to train. And I did a lot of races in the UK along the way. So I ran sort of 60-mile races and what have you. But I was always knackered at the end and had lots of trouble with my legs, my joints. The drugs that I'm on affect my joints and tendons. So that made it tough. I was injured I had a knee injury, which they thought was due to the drug. So I had an MRI scan. I sat with a doctor who said, you'll never run again. This is in October 2015. And he said, never run again. I said, oh, okay. So, but if you just rest for 9 weeks, don't run for anything, don't even run for a train, then maybe. Went back 9 weeks later, another MRI scan. He looked and said, I can't believe it. It's all cleared up. So he said, the power of rest. Isn't that amazing? So it just goes to show when the doctor says rest, you should rest. And then the drugs I was on failed. So I had chemotherapy. I was on another drug and it worked really, really well. I had this radiotherapy, really, really well. My blood scores were great. And then they started going up again. And cancer is like bacteria. So it doubles. So 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16. And so in cancer, what they call the doubling time is what's important. Because if 2 becomes 4 and it takes a year, well, 4 becomes 8, but that's 2 years, and 8 becomes 16, that's 3. It's fine. In my case, it was doubling every 3 weeks. So, you know, you're in trouble with prostate cancer when your score is above about 30, 40. You know, my score was 4, but it doubled in 3 weeks. And if you kept doing that, it would have been in the thousands within 6 months. Because, you know, 16, 32, 64, 128, next thing, you know, it's just, and therefore death shortly thereafter. So I then had to start another lot of drugs, and they were good drugs. Their side effects weren't too bad, but they only tend to last on average for a year if they worked at all. And I started taking those drugs in January 2016, but they were also causing problems for my liver and kidneys. And so I had this anxious 2 months wait to see, 1, if they would work properly, and 2, if my liver and kidneys could tolerate them. And by some miracle, the 3rd month went back for the blood scores, absolutely paranoid that the doctor's going to say, sorry, they're not working. It's actually, you know, they just turned the corner and suddenly from going downwards, you're where you need to be. Happy days, carry on. So that's great. So 2016, I went and ran the Marathon des Sables in April. And that's when I met Duncan the first time. He ran the race with no legs. He had just above the knee, he had prosthetic legs. And on day 4, he was pulled out. A long day. He got sand that got into his stumps, and it all gone septic and swollen. And I remember seeing him in the hospital tent, and he was in tears because to him that was the dream he had, and it wasn't going to happen. But you know, great story for him. Maybe he's someone you should interview. Great story because he had the perseverance, and he lost a load of weight, trained better, and came back the next year and finished.
Phenomenal.
So I finished that year, and then of course I had the bug. You know, I'd raised a load of money for charity. People were starting to ask me about what I was doing. Would I speak at conferences and things? I'm like, okay, if you want to hear me, I'll tell you my boring stories. But I was starting to realise there were things that were happening that were sort of lessons in life. So a couple already before I ran the marathon. One was I was training, and on my speakers, on my headphones, came an old song by Julian Lennon, John Lennon's son, called Saltwater. It's like an 80s song, fantastic green, tree-hugging kind of song. But like a lot of songs, you hear those words at the start, and towards the end you never really hear them because you kind of, you heard the first 2 lines and you give up. And right towards the end of the song, there's a line, "What will I think of me the day that I die?" And I had to stop. And I thought, that's it. That is the magic expression. On my deathbed, whenever that might be, I have to look back from every moment from now, because you can't change what went before. If I did something wrong yesterday, it's gone. But from now on, I have to look back on my life and say it was worthwhile, say I did the right things, reacted in the right way, helped people, enjoyed life, made good memories, that sort of stuff. And that kind of became a bit of a mantra for me. I worked for a bank, and we made some pretty grim decisions as a bank 15 years ago. Nowadays, we have this thing called the yes check. And one of the yes check things is, in 5 years' time, if you look back, will you be proud on what you did today? It's a really good way of looking at, if you sold something to a client, in 5 years' time, will you be proud you sold it? If you behaved in a certain way to a client, is that the right thing to do? Or was it a short-term fix? It becomes a really good way to live your life. If you're not going to be proud of it, don't do it. So, and it's got to stand the test of time. It's, as I said, not a short-term fix. You wave goodbye and smile, and then later you get the knife out and you've stabbed them in the back, really. So that was the first one. And then the second thing was, I came back from the Marathon des Sables, and I was back at work, and I work in London, and I was walking across Trafalgar Square, and on the pavement in chalk, there were all these pavement artists. And in the morning, I get to work early, like 6:30 in the morning, and it's just deserted, but you get the detritus of the night before. And there, in chalk was written, "You only have 2 lives, and the second one starts when you realise you only have one." And that's a bit like the Pink Floyd song. You think your life is forever. You think, when something goes wrong, that's all right, I'll go again. If that fails, I'll just do that instead. But actually, you haven't. You've only got one life. And I didn't realise that until I had that day I went for a run after chemotherapy. That was the day I realised it's either be a victim or be a victor. And a victor, what I mean by that is, I don't mean you're a winner in terms of you won the race, but you have actually done stuff yourself. Don't be a victim because someone tells you something bad. It's just, and I understand that, so I was there. It's just so easy in life to go, oh, well, it's all bad. My life's all grim. It's all gone wrong. I've lost my job. My girlfriend's left me, and all those. Of course, they're sad things, but you've got to find some joy. And so again, every day is a gift, and I make sure my days are always good, always, and there's no exceptions. So if you think in my life, there are grim days. Of course there are. We all have grim days. It might be when Sam's going to work and it's a really tough meeting, and I get home, I'll cook dinner and watch telly, and that's my day. So come on, Kevin, what's good about that? Well, loads are good about it, but you've got to understand why it's good. So you've got to understand that if you're going to eat tonight, and we're privileged in the world there where you can afford to eat every day and don't worry about if we put food on our table, then look forward to it. If you don't want to eat it, why are you eating it? So it's not just, it's spaghetti bolognese again. It's spaghetti bolognese. I love spaghetti bolognese, and I've got Parmesan cubes on the top, and I've got a glass of red wine with it, and that's lovely. But you look forward to it. So you don't make eating a chore, making it a pleasure. If you're watching telly, don't just watch telly for telly's sake. If you like the programme, don't just go watch telly. You like the programme, look forward to it. If you want to watch Neighbours, just say, hey, I want to watch Neighbours, I love that programme. When I get home, I'm going to watch today's episode and look forward to it. There's nothing wrong with that. And at work, even if the meeting is grim, you can say, I'm going to try and, what's a positive outcome? Can I make that customer happy? Can I make sure they walk away with a smile on their face, knowing that we're doing the best we can for them? And on the way to work, can I smile at people on the train? Can I say good morning to the ticket collector? That makes your day, an ordinary day, a better day. So in the morning, you wake up every day and you look out the window and it's raining, and you have a choice. You can either say, it's raining, that's my day ruined. Or you can say, it's raining, better take an umbrella. So if you do the former, you'll be sad. You'll probably upset your partner. You'll upset everyone on the train. When you get to work, it's raining, I got soaking wet, awful day. Everyone's having a bad day just because you chose to be sad when you saw the rain. Whereas if you say, oh, this I've got an umbrella, I've got a nice new coat I bought for last year for the rain when it came. So I'm going to wear that. Look at me in my nice new waterproof coat. You're smiling all the way, you get to work. They're all grim because they've got wet. Yeah, it's okay. I've got a nice new coat. Look at my coat. My umbrella's great as well. Just be happy. And that's up to you. It's your choice. It's as simple as, do I want to be happy about that or sad? And you can make that choice. For me, because I live in very short-term windows mentally, it's about having a good day today. And the number one recipe for a good day today is plan it, because I'm a planner, aren't I? So I like running's my thing. So I'm on a running streak at the moment. I've run every day for the last 535 days. I haven't missed a day.
Well
I've run. Thank you. So I haven't run today yet, though, so I've got to run still. I've run about 6,500 kilometres as well. So I run everywhere. And today, I will plan when and where I'm going to run tomorrow. So I like the planning. I think tomorrow I'm going to go to Epsom Downs. You know, the Derby's finished, the horse race is finished. It's only 2 miles from me. That finished over the weekend. The Downs will be clear, lovely, grassy, a couple of rolling hills. I'm going to run there tomorrow. And I run there at 8 a.m. because I can do some 4 exercises first. So I always do a bit of every day, do a bit of core stuff. Do my core stuff first, and I run there. Be great. The forecast is wonderful. 25 degrees centigrade tomorrow where I am. Brilliant. I love it. And I come back and have a bacon sandwich. Oh, I do like a bacon sandwich. A nice cup of coffee. And then go out with the wife and we might go shopping. And I might treat and let her buy something. That'd be great. What a great thing to look forward to. My day is good tomorrow, isn't it? Already planned it. And of course, then when tomorrow comes, you know what? I do all those things. I go for my run because I knew exactly when I was to do it. I fitted it in. And that's great because I've done what I said I'd do. I love running. I love my bacon sandwich. I love the core stuff. I feel I'm getting stronger. My wife's happy because I've gone out and bought her something. Win, 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 win. Great day. And it's still only 11 o'clock. And I'll plan that bit. And then I'm going to the hospital now for my blood test. Okay, that's not the great bit of the day. But I'm going to tell 10 nurses that they're wonderful. That's my mission tomorrow. And that's what I do. I go in there. I don't even think about the fact I've got a blood test. I go, right, find me those 10 nurses. And I get to 10, like earlier, I might do 15 now then. I'm going to smile at everyone. And something I learned, so there I am having my chemo, that all finished. And then about 3 years later, my bones started deteriorating. The drugs I'm on do my bones in. And so they're worried that I had osteoporosis. So you start taking calcium tablets and having this horrible stuff called zoledronic acid. And I thought, I just have a tablet for it, but no, it's an infusion, so another cannula. So I rock up for the first infusion, and it's in the chemo room, and I wasn't expecting that. So I walk into the chemo room, and I've got my iPad with me, and there's all these people just looking grim, and it took me straight back to 3 months after I was diagnosed. They're all looking helpless, and my medicine's just on a trolley thing, so I can walk around. And so I sat in the chair, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell them there's hope. So I get my iPad out, and I've got all my photographs of the races I've run. And I start smiling. I say, do you want to chat? And I go walk next to them and say, how are you and why are you here? And I'm really sorry. But it's not all doom and gloom. And they go, what have you done? And so, I've done this. And you show them. And without exception, they don't think, I'm never going to do that. They never think that. People don't think that. They think, I'm so glad you're doing it for me. I'm so glad you can do it. And maybe I can do it. Maybe actually I can do something when I get home tonight. I haven't got to be the victim. Maybe I can plan something tomorrow. Because tomorrow, I might feel a bit rubbish, but actually, I'm not going to be sick. I might feel sick, so I can go out still. I haven't got to sit in my front room watching rubbish TV, feeling miserable. I can go out and do something. And that's what I did. So I went and saw these people and showed them things and made them smile. We told a joke, and it's great. Talk about how rubbish cancer is, and but it's good. And so so I started to realise that I am, as you can tell, I'm quite opinionated about stuff in life, and I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm prepared to talk about it, and I kind of almost realised it was a bit of a gift. And I don't know why I'm alive still 6.5 years on, when most people I know are dead. I don't know why that drug I started 5 years ago is still working for me when it normally only works for 12 months. Now, I don't know about, again, any other men where it's still working 5 years on. So I don't know that. I do think in part it's because I run every day. I run for over an hour most days. In 2 days' time, I've got a 100-kilometre race. So I'm still running massive distances. And I believe that helps. But there's a part of me, I'm not religious at all. I have no, if there was a God, in my opinion, they wouldn't have cancer, would they? What kind of sick person would create a world with cancer? So that's to me, I'm afraid those of you that believe in God, that's why I don't believe in God. And don't tell me he moves in mysterious ways. If he does, that also makes him pretty sick. So in my mind, I don't believe in God, but I do believe that something somewhere says if I keep on doing good, if I keep on raising money and talking to people and trying to make a difference, then someone might let me keep on living. And so that's kind of why I keep on talking to people. And I've managed to raise £250,000 personally for Prostate Cancer UK. But then I realised I can raise so much, but if I get other people to help me, we can raise loads more. So I've had other people join me on marathons, walking marathons, cake bakes, quizzes, golf days, music nights. And they've raised £500,000. So between us, we raised £750,000 just because I've motivated them. And the amount of people come back to me and say, I never believed I could do that. And I say, well, what are you waiting for? So you don't put things off. And my best example of that is back in 2016 in the desert, in the Marathon des Sables, in my tent was a guy called Nick Butter. Now, Nick was a young pup. He was like 25 years old, full of energy, much, much faster and better runner than I, and much better looking as well. And he had everything going for him. And he said to me, Kevin, in 5 years' time, I'll do this amazing challenge. In 10 years' time, I'll do this amazing challenge. In 15 years' time, I looked and I thought, I can believe that you have the ability. I said, but don't wait for a rubbish prognosis to make you realise you've got to do it now. So in my head, I was thinking, but Nick, you're really clever. You've got a really good job. In 5 years' time, you have a massive mortgage, a wife and 3 kids and all this, and you won't be able to do the things you want to do. So if you want to do them whilst you're still, when you wasn't single, you had a girlfriend, but if you want to do them, you've got to do them now. And worse still, you could get a rubbish disease as well, and you'll get hit by a bus. So anyway, he went away, finished the race. He got stress fractures in his ankles the last day on crutches. That's pretty grim in the Sahara. So he's a tough guy. And about a year later, Kev, I've been thinking about what you said. I'm going to pack my job in and I'm off. What? I don't want to do that. You just sort of chase some dreams, don't change your life. And I said, so what are you going to do, Nick? He said, I'm going to run a marathon in every country in the world. Never been done before. 196 marathons. So it took another 6-7 months of planning, and off he set to run these marathons in every country of the world. So you think that includes like North Korea, Afghanistan, Yemen, all those countries that you don't really want to go to, all those places. And I remember he had like a leaving party, and his mum and dad were there, who I'd only met once before. And I felt so bad. I said to Nick, I said, if you don't come back, they're going to blame me. Because you keep on telling everyone the reason you're doing it is me. And so it's my fault. If you die in some far-fetched country, then, it's my fault. So anyway, he did run 196 marathons in every country in the world. It took him about 1.5 years in the end. Had all sorts of problems along the way. He's got a great book, just fantastic to read. And although he told me some of the stories, it was only when I read his book, I realised how grim, being done by security guards, by being beaten up, mugged, getting to countries where people said they'd meet him and then there was no at the airport, having to pay bribes to get through security, just all sorts of things. And even silly things like, oh yeah, I had some tummy trouble when I did that marathon. You read the book and you actually had to go lose 17 times in bushes. You just think, oh, that's pretty grim. That's quite tough to do that. And he also did it for Prostate Cancer UK because of me. And he raised over £100,000 for the charity because it was my fault for inspiring him. So when he got back, actually the last one he did was in Athens, and I ran with him. So I turned up, as did 2 other guys out of the tent in the desert that year. And so people say, why do you run these races? Forget cancer and stuff. The people you meet in those races become lifelong friends. We still meet up. We still get together. That 10, that first year, just amazing. So he did the last one. I remember seeing his mum and dad there in Athens, and I just said to him, I am so glad Nick's made it back alive, because now it's not my responsibility. What he does next is between you and him.
It's not my responsibility.
Yeah. So he then ran 100 marathons and 100 days along the length of Italy, and he's currently running the length of the whole of the coastline of the United Kingdom, which is thousands of miles, because it's quite in and out. That's what he's doing at the moment. I think he's in Scotland at the moment. So yeah, great guy, and very very inspirational himself. Actually, I might have I might have given him the spark, but now he's gone off and he's done some amazing things. And sometimes in life, that's all it takes. It's about, can you be the spark for someone else? You haven't got to do it all for them. You just have to be that bit that ignites their passion. And so that's Nick, and I'm really pleased I've inspired him. But I've met some amazing people. I think I'm lucky. I wish I didn't have cancer. Of course, I wish I didn't have cancer. But I'm so lucky, because cancer and reading things on pavements in chalk and hearing songs in my head that I'd heard but never listened to before mean that I know every day is precious. So I go, and every day is special for me. I don't waste a day. I always do something that's good. And so I go on these races still, and I love races. Coronavirus has really got in the way of life for me, in doing what I initially wanted to do. But I've since that first marathon des Sables, I've run it 4 times now. So I'm the only person with any T4 cancer to ever run that race 4 times.
Amazing.
I've raced across same sort of distance, so 250 kilometres, Cambodia, Albania, Spain. I've raced across the Arctic twice, putting a sled solo when it's like -40. And in the Arctic, that's probably the only time we've been really scared racing, because you are on your own. They have support vehicles that come past about every 4 hours. But when it's -30, -40, 4 hours is a long time, and you've got a tracker with you. But if the weather's bad, they close the road and they couldn't get to you. So, and there are wolves, and there are moose, and there are polar bears. It's the North Pole. And I remember going, but basically it's a non-stop race. So you start and you finish when you finish. And there are checkpoints, but they're about 80 miles apart. So I remember going off, and I got to about 23 hours I've been going for, and I was absolutely shattered. I was on my own. And I knew I wasn't allowed to sleep on the main trail, because there are lorries that go up and down occasionally, and they won't see you, and you just get run over. So you've got to find a bit in the snow. Problem is, the snow's really soft, so if you walk on it, you'll just sink. So you have to try and find a hard bit. And I saw paw prints everywhere, and I was paranoid that I was going to get attacked by wolves or polar bears or ordinary bears, and I was hallucinating. And I remember looking at the trees and thinking, there's people in the trees. And the trees are, in the Arctic, the trees are only about 8 feet high, because they don't grow any more than that. And then I saw in the distance, I saw a filing cabinet. I thought, who would fly tip a filing cabinet in the middle of the Arctic? That's just, because I get there, there's no filing cabinet. And I realised I had to stop. I was absolutely worn out. So eventually I found a place with no paw prints, and basically on your own, so you put a bag in the snow, and you just try and fall asleep for 3 hours. And I lay there and I couldn't fall asleep, and I heard people come past me on the race. So I thought, lost another place in the race. And eventually I thought, I haven't slept, I'm going to get up. And when I got up, actually only one person would come past me, but around my little bivvy bag was surrounded by paw prints. And I can't tell what the animals were, but that noise I was hearing was animals. It wasn't people.
Oh my God.
And whilst I know I'm going to die of terminal cancer one day, I really don't want to get eaten by a polar bear. That's not the way I want to die. So it kind of scares the pants off me still. So if COVID allowing, next year I'm going back to I did the short race, 120 miles. The long race is 383 miles, that's 600 something kilometres non-stop. So it's 9 days. So I'm going to go back and do that. I've paid my entry fee. So hopefully in March next year, that's what I'll be doing. But COVID came along about this time last year, or April last year. And I was lucky. I managed to do a race in February in a place called Sahara. It's a tiny country off the coast of Africa. And it was cool. It was a jungle race. The finish line was the equator. So that was and it's on this island where they have a map of the equator. So literally or the map of the world rather, and then you finish on the line of the equator. So that was quite cool. And although day one, I was in the jungle and, I knew there were snakes. I'm not scared of snakes, but I knew there were snakes. There's one snake in particular, a black cobra. And if you get bitten by that, you're dead in about 80 minutes unless you get the antidote. The antidote only works half the time. When we were racing, the antidote was probably about 3 hours away. So basically, if you get bitten, you're dead. And I went round this corner on a quite narrow trail, and I thought, right in front of me, 2 yards in front of me, I thought, there's a tyre just fallen on the floor. And it wasn't. It went, and it was a black cobra. And I stopped, and I had to edge past it, and it looked the whole way around on this trail. I went in the corner. And then I suddenly thought, there are 2 girls behind me I've just overtaken. They're going to go straight into it. And I don't think, they don't want to attack you. I think it would try to avoid me and then slipped out the tree. I think that's what happened. And so I've got to go back. So I went back, and there was the snake was still there, and I was kind of 2 yards from it, looking around the corner. I said to the girls, look, you better walk around the edge really slowly. And I said, why? I said, just trust me. And they came around and I said, that's why. And they went, oh. And now we know, well, all the locals, they all wear welly boots. So that's really hot. They wear rubber boots up to their knees, all of them, and they all have machetes. And we saw loads of black cobras. I never saw another living one, but loads of dead ones where they find them and they kill them because they are, unfortunately, they don't want to hurt you, but you disturb them and they'll bite you. So for the rest of the week's race, I was paranoid of being bitten by a cobra. So what I did was I secretly tried to follow someone else always. So I thought, if someone's in front of me by 10 yards, if there's a snake, they'll scare them off. And if they don't, they'll get bitten, which is a bit selfish. But hey, someone's got to do it for someone, take it for the team. But that was a great. So I got back from that race, and then everything was cancelled. The world became locked down. And I'd entered the Marathon des Sables again, which is in April. And on the forums, they were, oh, it's terrible, and I can't do this, and all the training's wasted. And I thought, I know what I do. I'll run it in my back garden. Now, my back garden's quite small. It's only the whole, if you go around my garden, down the side of my house, around my tiny little driveway, it's about 90 metres, so 90 yards, whatever. And so I thought, I'm going to do that. And it was 2,600 laps equals 250 kilometres. And I did it just like the race. So they all start the race every day with Highway to Hell by AC/DC. That's how the race always starts. So I had that every day when I started. I had all my gear on, my desert gear. As it happened, it was quite hot in the UK last year in April. It was probably kind of only about 25 degrees. It wasn't 40 degrees, but nonetheless. And so I just did laps of my garden. And so I did the long day, did the whole marathon one day. Very boring. I didn't get lost, of course, because you can't really get lost in your own garden. And I managed to get on the BBC on British UK TV on the breakfast time, quite a popular show. And they had 5 minutes of me on there and raised a whole load of money and then inspired other people. So on the last day, loads of people messaged me and said, we're going to do some laps of our garden for you as well. And there were everything from Boy Scouts to colleagues to other runners to people who couldn't run at all, who just walked, to a friend who just had cancer. And the furthest he'd walked was half a mile since he had his operation of stomach cancer. And he did a mile in his back garden. Just to prove to people that, in life, so many people want to tell you what you can't do, especially at the moment. You can't go there and you can't do this. But forget that lot. You focus on what you can do. And there is so much you can do. So then races were still cancelled. So what do I do next? I know I've never run 100 miles before in one go in 24 hours. I'll try and do that. So I worked out a 3-mile loop around my house. I failed. I got to 17 hours, around 78 miles. And then I was ill. And that was it. But, I tried my hardest.
78 miles is very far. Let's give you credit.
I tried. Unfortunately, I went wrong that day. There are lots of reasons why I failed. The main reason, and it's a sad reason, I was already, I was going to start at 10 in the morning. At 9:45, I got a message from a friend of mine saying another friend of mine, Lloyd, had died of prostate cancer that morning. Now, Lloyd was younger than me. I call Lloyd my cancer twin. Lloyd was diagnosed at 44. His children were 8 years old, and he died at 49. So, I was diagnosed a year before him. And when I first met him, he said, we're going to be the first guys to beat this, Kev. And I said, we won't beat it, but we can give it a run for its money. I'm under no illusions. I think a bit of reality is where I live. But he was always convinced he was going to beat it until about a year and a half ago. And then he realised he wasn't going to. And, he very sad. So my tactics of how I was going to run the 100 miles went out the window. I ran far too fast. I did like a 5-hour marathon to start off with, which is ridiculous when you run for 100 miles. And so the first 12 hours I ran far too fast and then paid the price later on. But I ran the first 10 miles with tears in my eyes for poor Lloyd, and his family, actually, because, again, it's not worries him. It's worries his wife and his kids. And talking about prostate cancer, I did a presentation once to try and get a corporate gig for the charity. And at the end, the lady I was presenting to said to me, yes, Kevin, but prostate cancer is a man's disease and we're a very inclusive company. And I looked at her and I said, man's disease? I said, do you want to ask my wife? Right now, she's got to deal with me being like a Duracell bunny running around excited, raising money, awareness on podcasts. I feel like I'm doing some good. I've got a real sense of purpose in life, thanks to what I do and thanks to other people for letting me do these things. And she has to watch that and put up with me because I don't care about painting the house right now. To me, I want to get out there and do things and make a difference. And then she's got to watch me slowly die. And then, right now, if she's having a bad day, apart from me, no one says, I don't go to work today, you stay at home. No one says that. And then she has to watch me die, deal with my kids while I'm dying. Then she's got to deal with the death and the funeral. And then she's got to deal with my life afterwards. And whilst I hope, she better cry on the day of the funeral, but after that, I want no more tears. I want her to go and live life. And if she has to meet someone else, I want to meet someone else. I want her to have a wonderful life still. But I think she has a harder gig than me because I get people telling me I'm great. I get latitude from work. I get lovely drugs when I'm not well to take the pain away. And then one day it'll be all over. But that's not the case for her. So, I never ever say prostate cancer is a man's disease. In fact, I think anyone with any cancer, the person that shares it with them has a tougher gig. But all the focus is always put on the person with the illness. And I wish there'd be some more focus on my wife because the only person who can do that is me. I can't get my kids to do that because, of course, I've got to focus on them as well. So that's my responsibility. That burden on your shoulders, that worries me, actually worries my family, is on my shoulders and only my shoulders all the time. And I don't want people to treat me like a victim. I don't want people to not say things. I want people to say what they think. And I've had people say to me at work, oh, Kevin, you're blagging, aren't you? You haven't really got cancer. Because if you had cancer, you couldn't do all those things. And you said you'd be dead in 2 years, and you're still here 6 years on. So you must be a liar, Well, the doctor. And so I can't wait to survive for 10 years. I don't know if I will or not. Because if I do, I'm going to find the doctor that told me not to think 10 years and thank him. Because, he might think, oh, that's a bad thing. But he made my life. He was the one that made me realise also how precious life is. He put that stop clock ticking. And I realised I was on borrowed time. And the first 2 years were awful. But then when I got to my 2-year cancerversary, I then thought every day's a gift. It's bonus time now. So you can't be upset with the bonus, can you? If someone says, life is like, I'm going to give you 100,000. $100,000. You think, great, I need $100,000. And then one day someone says, I'm sorry, it's only $20,000. And you go, I wanted 100,000. I'm only getting 20,000. But then every day someone gives you another $100. And you go, oh, okay. Well, that's okay then. You forget the fact that originally you were hoping for 100. So in me, I was hoping to live till I was 100 years old. Fortunately, I get told I live till I'm 51. Well, now every day is like me getting, I didn't expect 53 or 54, or my daughter finishing her A-levels, her exams, or my daughter getting a degree in history and becoming a school teacher. I never thought I'd see that, but I have now. I never thought I'd run the Marathon des Sables 4 times. I never thought I'd do all the speaking I've done. I ran on New Year's Eve last year. I managed to get a thing going with a running company, and it was called Run Around the World with Kev. And the idea was that on New Year's Eve, wherever it was New Year's Eve somewhere in the world, so we had 50 hours in total, we tried to run or walk collectively around the world. And
I actually was involved in that.
Hey!
Yeah.
Well,
I was here I was in Melbourne, Australia on New Year's Eve, and I ran a cheeky 50 kilometres thinking of you. So I thank you for such a beautiful experience. It was really lovely to end that year like that.
Well, thank you for that. And said 600 people did it. We raised £12,000 for Prostate Cancer UK, which is great. I thank UltraX, the running company, for letting me do
wonderful
it.
Company.
Wonderful company. Oh, they've done lots of me. They started my running streak. They were the ones that inspired me to start my running streak, and that's great. So, but my wife got COVID over Christmas, and I'd committed to run 3 marathons as my part of Run Around the World with Kev. And so, of course, I couldn't, could I? Because I had to lock down. So I had to do my back garden again. So I had to do 3 marathons in my back garden. And I had a COVID test because I thought I ought to, just before I started. I got the results the day after I finished, and I had COVID too. So I guess I'm probably the only person in the world to run 3 marathons on COVID, because I don't know if anyone else has done it. So, I wouldn't recommend it, by the way. I did
and with a terminal illness.
I do remember running.
Rock solid.
I felt a bit sluggish. I remember
feeling a bit
sluggish. And I thought, I wonder what it is, because I run 3 marathons. I thought, I can run 3 marathons, though. So I don't know why, but I did feel a bit sluggish. And now I know why. So I wouldn't recommend it. But, and that's, again, it goes back to that planning what you do today for tomorrow. And one of the great things about having a running streak is I no longer ever think, shall I run tomorrow? That the word shall hasn't been there for over a year. It's only, where am I going to run tomorrow and how long? And that's true with any good habit. So if you're going to not drink alcohol and not smoke cigarettes, you don't think, oh, shall I have a cigarette? So you don't think that. You just think, I'm not going to smoke tomorrow. It's not even on the agenda. I'm not going to go to the place where I associate with that. I'm going to go to my happy place. And that's another mechanism I have for dealing with things. There's a film I saw years ago about the Russian hierarchy when they were all killed by the Bolsheviks, whatever, back in the revolution times. And right at the end of it, they're all the royalty are in a room, and they're all about to get shot. And there's a young girl, I can't remember, Anastasia maybe, I don't know who it might have been in real life. And she looks at her sister, I think, or her mother, and I looks and just close your eyes and have happy thoughts. And that sticks in my head a lot. Not the close your eyes bit, but have happy thoughts. So when I have a bad day, and I do have bad days still, I reckon I now can deal with the bad thoughts in about 8 seconds. Sometimes I have bad days for the whole day. So if you go back in time, when I was first diagnosed, it lasted weeks sometimes. But now if I have a bad thought, 8 seconds. Because it only takes 8 seconds to have the happy thought. But you have to plan the happy thought in advance. So you have to know what your happy thoughts are, ready for the moment when you need it. It's no good saying, oh no, we've got a hole in the ship. Where do we find something to plug the hole up? By the time you found something to plug the hole up, the ship's sunk. So what you do is you prepare in advance. So my happy thoughts are running, the friends I've met, the Sahara Desert, getting married to my wife, spending time with my kids. So I've got all those all stored up. So when I have that day when I'm in the I worry about the blood test, the Russian roulette moment. I go, happy thoughts. Well, let's think about where I'm going on holiday this year. Let's think about the kids. Let's think about running with my friends tomorrow. That's what I think about. Let's think of the money I've raised, and that's what then just suddenly the sad thought just goes. And it can be a planned thing or a memory. It hasn't got to be, if you haven't got any things in the future that you're looking forward to, then pick up one of the good ones out of the past. There's nothing wrong with looking back, but don't look back with regret, look back with happiness. The regret ones, just forget those. And now I make mistakes. I still do things wrong some days, and I make a point. If I've upset someone, somebody like lying in bed is the best time to think, or running. I lie in bed and I go, oh, maybe I said the wrong thing to my wife. Maybe I shouldn't have said that or done that. Maybe I should have done that. So the next day, the first thing I do is I put it right. Really sorry yesterday. Didn't mean that. I can see it was important to you. I was a bit flippant. Let's do it now. And then you make it better. And then you have no regrets then, because that's just gone. And I genuinely there's nothing actually I can think of that I'm not proud of. I could have done better, probably, but I've always tried. And that's what it's about, always trying. In ultra running, there's that expression, better to start and not finish than never start at all. And that's it. You have to put your foot in the start line or you're never going to know where you're going to end up. So, it means so easy for me to give up 6 years ago. Absolutely so easy after that first day of chemo to be that victim. And just go, no, you're right, my wife. I'm not going to run. I'm going to stay at home. I read, it horrifies me. On the Prostate Cancer UK website, there's a forum. And people around the world use the forum. It's free. And it's great because you see what other countries are doing that's slightly different to what we do. And so you share ideas. And about a third of the people on the forum are men, like me. About a third are the wives of the men. And about a third are the children or friends of the men. So it's quite a good balance of viewpoints. And one of the things I hate is when a wife goes on and says, week 2 after chemo, I'm not letting my husband out of the house. Because they know their immune system's low. So they're saying stay in the house. But I wouldn't go and jump on a packed bus. But fresh air is good. Staying indoors is probably full of scuzzy old air that you don't want to be having. You want to have fresh air. So it should have been week 2, I'm getting my husband out of the house, but I'm not anywhere near the pub or anywhere. We're going to go for a walk somewhere or we're just going to go walk around the block. That's good for you. One of the problems of COVID is a lot of people are now working from home. Now that has advantages because I see my family much more than I used to, which is lovely, and it's easy to go for a run and I don't waste 3 hours a day on the train. So that's the plus sides. The downside is people are sitting at their desks at home or their kitchen tables for 8 hours a day, and they're not even walking to the car or walking to the bus or walking to the train, walking in to get a sandwich lunchtime. They're just sitting at home. So the one thing better than sitting down is getting up. So the first thing people do is get up every hour and make a coffee or something, have a cup of tea or a glass of water. And the next best thing, of course, is going for a walk. So if you can, in your lunch break, you need to go for a walk. You need to have a walk. But having a stroll is okay. But the next best thing is going for a stroll where you get clammy. And I like that expression, getting clammy. You've got to go at speed that makes your heart pump fast. Because then you really are burning calories and doing some good. Going for a stroll, you don't burn any calories at all. You don't actually do much for your body. Better than sitting down, but not as good as getting clammy. And of course, the next thing is go for a run. That's the one. Go for a run, and then everything's better in the world. That's what I think. So, yeah. Sorry, I've waffled on. Do you have any more questions for me?
You definitely haven't waffled. Honestly, Kevin, it's been such a privilege to sit here and listen to your beautiful inspirational stories. I'm definitely simmering in all the wisdom. I'd love to ask a question because I think hindsight can be a very beautiful thing. And I think for listeners that potentially can't relate to you in the sense of being diagnosed with a terminal illness, what would you recommend to people that haven't had that? I know in your blog you almost call it like a reality check in the way to live life, because there's kind of that balance that we have to manage where, you want to live your dreams, you want to go out there and live life, but there's also sort of this, quote unquote, long-term aspect that we have in lives where we have to also plan for the future. How would you advise in like sort of balancing between live in the moment, but also sort of have your bases covered for the future?
I have 3 missions in life. I have 3 things I believe. That's probably actually a good answer to your question. 3 things. So every day, number 1 is do something you enjoy every day, every single day, but never, ever at the expense of someone else. So that's the first thing. So if you want to find just one thing that you enjoy, whatever it is, if it's watching telly, knitting, doesn't matter what your thing is, baking cakes, just do it. Just do that one thing every day. Number 2 is to make sure that you're making good memories. So the 5-year thing, whatever you're doing today, whatever it is, the good or the bad stuff, make sure you're making a memory so that you can look back, your family can look back, your friends and other people you touched along the way can look back with a smile. In my world, that means that when I'm on my deathbed, I can look back and go, yeah, that was great. I'm glad I did that. No regrets. And the 3rd thing is to make sure you do some good every day. Now, doing good, some people say, that's got to be that's enormous, Kev. I can't raise $10,000 today for someone. Of course you can't. But you can phone up a friend who you haven't spoken to for ages. You can pick up the bit of litter outside your house that is someone else's job. If you cut the grass outside your house, you could always do the neighbours as well. You could always help that person across the road. You could always let someone else in front of you in the queue, because they look like they're busier than you and you've got a bit of spare time. There are simple things that are helping others. It hasn't got to be some massive charity project, although they're good as well, of course. But we can all do those simple things. Smile at someone. Tell your partner they look good today. That's a good thing. It is a good thing. We all like, I don't do what I do to want people to say I'm great. I mean, it's nice when they do, but that's not why I do it. But if no one ever told me I was ever doing the right thing, you start to lose a bit of faith in what you're doing. So, if your partner doesn't do the right thing every day and you don't tell them, they're going to do it forever. There's nothing worse, So in my house, we kind of share the cooking. And my wife likes experimenting. She likes having a new dish. And she knows what I like, and most of the time it's great. But if I don't tell her it's not great, I don't know, it was nice, thanks. I'll get it again next week. And then at what stage to tell her you don't like it? Next week, the week after, 4 years on? But you've been out there 4 years, yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. No, I didn't like it much either, but I thought you liked it, so I cooked it for you. You can't do that. You've got to, there's that honesty again. And in a polite way, you don't go, that's awful. Where'd you get that from? Give it to the dog sort of thing. You don't do that. But in a polite way, you kind of say what but you make them happy because they'll be happier knowing what you've done. What they're doing is right. So, and praise people at work. When people do good things, if people listen to this podcast and love it, they should tell you. They say, really like that. And people don't. We're all guilty of it. So you'll get some, if 100 people listen, you might get 20 people say, that was great, and 80 don't. So then you're sitting there thinking, well, did they not? Was it rubbish? Do you want more or less of Kevin's? Is that good or bad? You don't know. So you want the feedback. You want 100 people to come out and say, yeah, love it, or it was great, but a bit shorter, or a bit longer, a bit longer, or could you put some other visual stuff there? And that's it. Everyone likes feedback. Feedback's good. Some people can't take criticism very well. I understand that. But if you know those people, just be careful how you give the feedback. Was it called the old, pardon my expression, the old shit sandwich? Some good, some bad, and some good. It's kind of, that's how you do it. That's how you tell people if you've got some bad news to tell them. But yeah, you just be happy and smile. Smiling is infectious. If you smile, other people will smile with you. Or they wonder why you're smiling, And what's so good? Well, life's good. And one of the problems with me now is that people think I'm some kind of hippie, tree-huggy and loving life. And I'm still, I'm not the best person in the world. I'm still not, I try and be greener. I'll give a good example. So I used to run before I was ill. If I was running down the road and there was a slug or a snail on the pavement where my foot was going to land, it landed on the slug or snail. It's just, and it didn't even think about it. Now, if my foot's back, I'll move my foot 2 inches and not land on it. Because now I realise I have no right to unnecessarily end that animal's life. I haven't become like some, vegan. Nothing wrong with vegans, by the way, but I'm some vegan animals, are only for, only for looking nice for the planet. We can't touch them in any other way. But actually, equally, you don't harm something just because. There's no, if you can, and people say, well, what difference did it make? Well, for that snail, it made a lot of difference. It made no difference to me at all. It was so easy to move my foot 2 inches to the right when it landed. But that snail's now got lots of baby snails that are probably eating my garden. But hey, why not? Why not?
And Kevin, do you think, I'd love to re-emphasize your point, because I think it's really important for anyone that has an illness or who doesn't. The power of a compelling future, I think, is a really big one. In, as you say, you plan for tomorrow and you have these things to sort of work towards. Is that something that you just highly recommend to everyone, is to have these goals or something that you're sort of moving towards every year or every day for that matter?
Yeah, I think if you don't look forward to things, I think you're missing out. So there is undeniably a joy in a surprise, a nice surprise. So if we get a present we weren't expecting, you open it, that's a joy. And for that moment, you feel maybe that day, I didn't expect that. That's lovely. How nice. I didn't expect to be taken to the theatre today, and that's great. Lovely. So don't ever not do surprises. But you could have looked forward to that for a year. You could have looked forward to what you were going to wear, what would it be like, I wonder what would be a great show, who I'm going to go with, what I'm going to eat, we're going to a restaurant first, all that sort of stuff. So if you can plan something and look forward to it and bring other people on that journey, that's the bit that's really key, is don't just make it your dream. Get them to buy into it as well. So I like to think that my wife understands the joy I get from running and why I do it and the training and stuff. And she says it gives me a purpose in life. It makes me not miserable. It makes me hard to live with at times because I'm so keyed up for it. But the alternative of me like that would have been grim. If I'd just been the person I was the first month or so, I'd have been, if I was still here, her life would be a misery. Because there's no joy in seeing someone sad all the time. So yeah, have that plan and chip away at it, to try and, if it's a big plan, great, we should all have, well, they BHAGs, aren't they? Big, hairy, audacious goals. We should all have those sometimes in life. Something that's massive, nothing wrong with that, but don't have it there and never get there. In my work, I'm a corporate bank manager, and I just talk to clients who own businesses and say, so when are you going to retire? And if they say, I've got a 5-year plan, that meant they hadn't planned for it at all. And then you see them next year and you say, when are you going to retire? And they say, in 5 years' time. And the 5 years would never come. It's too far away. For most of them, there are exceptions. For most of them, you ask someone, I'll do that next week. And you ask them next week, I'll do that next week. You put things off. So for me, when somebody said, I'd go and see them and say, 5 years I'll retire, 5 years I'll retire. The next year I see them, I'm retiring in 6 months. In 1 year, the 5 years had become, because it wasn't, they weren't even thinking about it. And suddenly it became reality. And because it was so close, they hadn't normally planned properly for it. So there's the same sort of thing in life. We need to think about realistically. If you want to do it, like my friend Nick, who ran around the world, you've got to plan and you've got to do it. So, you should be thinking about these things. Have that great idea. What steps we're going to take. So anyway.
So if there was one thing that you would recommend us to take with us from everything that you've experienced so far into our own daily lives, finishing this podcast, what is one thing that we could take practically or reflect on from you?
I think you need to be honest with yourself. The one thing you have to look at yourself and say every day, am I pleased with who I am and what I am and what I've done? And if the answer is yes, happy days. Because if you're happy, remember my number one rule, be happy every day, but never at the expense of someone else. So if you do that, then that's good enough. It hasn't got to be out of this world. Don't beat yourself up because you haven't, won the Olympics. If you're happy just jogging around the block, that's good enough. But be happy. You just be happy. As humans, we have a choice. Most people don't have a choice. Animals rather don't have a choice. Animals do things because they have to. They eat, they reproduce, they just do things like that. Whereas we have a choice. We can choose to be good or bad. We can choose to smile or scowl. We can choose to try our hardest or give up, to be a victim or a victor. We have that choice. So when you choose the right one, and we all know what the right one is. No matter how badly you're brought up as a child, no matter all the bad things that happen to you, maybe if you're unlucky in life, you still know what the good things are. You may know them because you've had the bad ones. It's a shame, but you know what the good ones are. Choose the good ones.
And so, on a final note, Kevin, I'd love to ask you, what does it mean to you to be human?
To be human, for me, is about just enjoying the moment and being alive. It doesn't, tomorrow, was it Kung Fu Panda? I heard this. Have you ever seen the cartoon Kung Fu Panda? Fantastic film. And I saw it with my children, by the way. It wasn't something I chose to see myself, but it is a good film. And in Kung Fu Panda, the 3 lines came out, which I think are an old Chinese proverb, is, yesterday is history, tomorrow is mystery, but today is a present, and the present is a gift.
So that was the amazing Kevin Weber. I hope his words have touched your heart just as much as they've touched mine. So I'm going to have a little giggle here because it's been a long podcast. And normally we wrap up with the final question, what does it mean to you to be human? But Kevin proceeded to talk, and he actually proceeded to share some very important information, that he's written a book and it's coming out in September. It's called Dead Man Running, and I've just added this little clip just for you to get more information on that and how to support Kevin.
Yeah, so I've written a book. That's why I was in lockdown. Yeah, what did you do in lockdown? So I wrote a book. It gets released in September. So
Okay.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know. You don't make any money out of books, by the way, so it's not about the money. But I just thought I wrote the book because I wanted to share my story so people didn't give up. People tried again when they got knocked down. They be the best they can be. And also, I wrote a book because I wanted my children to realise what life has been like, and I wanted them to be proud of me. And I think
beautiful.
The youngest one's probably too young. He's 16 now, but he doesn't really get it all. So I wrote a book.
And what is the book called, Kevin?
The book is called Dead Man Running. So
Good name. Good name.
Yeah.
Sounds like a blockbuster.
Yeah. It's one of those books you can put under a table that's wobbly that might just stabilise it. Anyway, we've talked for hours.
We have talked for hours, and I appreciate it so much, Kevin. It's just been an absolute pleasure to listen to you, and I know personally I've learnt so much. But yeah, we'll call it here.
Yeah, you've got a lot of editing to do.
A question that Kevin has inspired me to reflect on is, am I proud? Am I proud of how I am living throughout my day? Thank you for listening to the To Be Human podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, share with friends and family, and become part of the To Be Human collective.